Hey, what's going on guys, Chris here with another Battlefield 5 video for you, and today I'm going to be giving you loads of tips and advice on how you can improve in the game, get a bit higher up on that scoreboard, and just generally be a better player. There's a lot of things that aren't explained very well when you first jump into Battlefield 5's multiplayer, and after putting quite a bit of time into it, I found that doing certain things and playing in certain ways has allowed me to survive for longer, do things easier, and even win more gunfights, and this guide's going to be going over all of that sort of stuff. Hopefully it should help you out, and even highlight a few things you probably didn't know, or even think about doing. So here's my big list of 50 tips, tricks and tactics. You might want to get yourself some popcorn because it's going to be a pretty long video. So in no particular order, tip number 1, pretty simple one to kick off with. Always be prepared to switch over to your sidearm if shit hits the fan, and you just simply haven't got enough ammo left over in your primary weapon to seal the deal. Whipping out a pistol is usually a lot quicker than reloading, so if you need to finish someone off or take down another player nearby, don't forget about that trusty sidearm. It's probably going to save your life in quite a few situations. Number 2, when in doubt, hit the deck. Lying prone can be a great way to not only avoid getting shot when those bullets come flying, but also make you a harder target to see amongst the environment. Sight lines will often be blocked by cover pieces, debris and even grass on some of the maps. Plus an enemy will have to readjust their aim to shoot lower to the ground, giving you more opportunity to shoot back if they come running around a corner to hunt you down. Another way to make good use of that prone button is to use it whenever you need to perform a reload in an awkward spot. Hiding behind a bit of cover is usually the best thing to do when reloading, but because you'll blend into the environment better when you're lying on the ground, this will often make you harder to see, especially if you stay still. And if there's some cover nearby, it might be best to lie prone behind said cover to further reduce that vulnerability even more. Tip 4, if you're out in the open and you can see a sniper in the distance taking pop shots at you, try running in an unpredictable pattern to make yourself a harder target to hit. In most cases, the sniper's going to have to land 2 body shots or a headshot to take you out of the fight. In past games, you could simply suppress them and run off to safety, but this isn't the case in Battlefield 5 with suppression not affecting spread. So it's often better to just be a slippery opponent and avoid incoming fire by zigzagging your way to safety. A good tip for console players now, I'd highly recommend switching your crouch and melee buttons around by either using the alternate controls in the settings or just manually map them through custom mapping, which can also be done in the settings. This is going to make it a hell of a lot easier to crouch, slide and go prone as you navigate around the map, as the right thumbstick is much easier to access than the circle or B button, which should be reserved for melee, which isn't used anywhere near as often. Might take a bit of getting used to, but it's definitely worth swapping these two around, as it'll give you a lot more control over your movements. If you want to be a really effective medic, then a great tip is to make sure you have the smoke grenades and the smoke grenade launcher equipped on your loadout, as you could use the smoke to hide yourself while reviving down teammates. This means that you won't have to risk your own life as much when reviving teammates killed out in the open, and you'll also be able to reap more points by doing so too. And this can also be a good tactic to use when you're not playing as a medic, but still want to revive down squad members with that longer animation. Tip number 7, make good use of the game's sliding mechanic. It's there for a reason. Sliding around allows you to dodge incoming fire a bit better when traversing around the map to and from cover, as you'll be harder to hit due to the faster movement, combined with you being a slightly smaller target. It's a great way to navigate around, and you can also use it to surprise an unsuspecting enemy by sliding around cover, gunning them down as you do. Along with sliding, there's also a new movement mechanic in Battlefield 5 that allows you to run whilst in a crouch position, and this is another thing that's going to increase your chances of survival by making you a harder target to see and hit while you navigate around the map. You should take advantage of it whenever you're behind low cover, and whenever you're moving around in areas with long grass, as you can get out of dangerous situations quicker and flank enemy positions easier without getting caught out. My next tip is basically don't shoot everyone you see. In a lot of cases, your opponent is going to be wielding a weapon that can take you down quicker and easier at the distance that they're at. Not to mention that shooting at them at an unsuitable range can also give your position away to the target and other nearby enemies too. In these cases, it's often best to retreat to safety if you've been seen, or get closer to your target within the weapon's optimal range before opening fire, unless you're pretty sure that you'll be able to take them out of course. Tip number 10. Make sure you resupply with extra ammo when you're spawning on one of your team's flags by visiting a nearby ammo station. You don't actually spawn in with the maximum amount of ammo that you can hold, so this can be one of the benefits of spawning in on a flag rather than a squad member, as you can stock up on your reserves, ensuring you're going to be able to last longer, before you'll need to hunt down some more bullets. Speaking of ammo, one of the other ways to get that lost ammunition back is by picking it up from dead enemies out on the battlefield. This is a bit easier said than done if you're a sniper in a window or if you're guarding an objective from a defensive position, but if you're pushing forwards or playing within closer proximities, then it's usually best to run over an enemy's down body after killing them, picking up some rounds that you probably lost during that gunfight. It's best to know that some weapons in the game feature select fire toggles that let you switch between firing modes on the go. These weapons are indicated by symbols on the gun selection menu, showing either fully, semi or fully and semi-automatic fire icons. Fully automatic weapons are typically set to full auto at default, but some can be swapped over to semi-auto by simply holding the triangle or Y button on console, V on PC. And when you do this in-game, you can see what mode's currently selected by looking at the icon in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Changing to semi-auto might make it easier to land individual shots on target further away. And although you could always just tap fire the gun or fire it off in short bursts, going semi-auto is often a better way to manage your ammo without wasting as many shots. Definitely a useful thing to know with ammo being less abundant in Battlefield 5. As for tip 13, guns can be heavily customized with different optics, stocks, grips, muzzles and, well, pretty much anything you can think of. But these customization options don't actually affect the way the weapons work, as they don't directly alter any stats, being mainly there for visual purposes. If you want to change a gun statistically, you need to go over to its specializations tree instead and buy upgrades with in-game currency earned through playing the game. Tip 14. Hipfire Sidearms in CQC. If you need to quickly finish someone off in close range, it's usually best to shoot from the hip. Reason being is because you've already taken a bit of time to switch over to your sidearm, any extra time aiming down sights could be enough to get you killed in a one-on-one fight. Plus it'll also allow you to maneuver around your target a little bit easier, and maybe avoid a bullet or two as you do. Because you'll only usually need a shot or two to finish them off, hip firing should be a quick and easy way to get the job done. Tip number 15. If you're an assault player and you want to inflict lots of damage on a nearby ground vehicle ASAP, a good way to do so is by lobbing a few sticks of dynamite onto it, causing them to stick, and then detonate the dynamite prematurely by throwing an anti-tank bundle grenade at it rather than manually blowing it up by the detonator. This not only cuts down time, but it also allows you to inflict more explosive damage to the vehicle too, letting you destroy the vehicle more efficiently. Tip 16. Smoke grenades. Make sure you use them. They've been really effective and probably a bit underrated in past Battlefield games, and they're just as useful in Battlefield 5. You get 2 of them when you spawn, and they're just simply brilliant for a load of different reasons. Need to advance towards an objective, but you're met by a wall of snipers in the distance? Throw smoke. Need a distraction while you flank around another way? Throw smoke. Need to heal up and reload safely after getting shot to bits while you're hanging on to dear life? Throw smoke. It's perfect for blocking enemy sightlines, and it's perfect for getting you out of awkward situations. I definitely suggest using smoke grenades more. As for tip number 17, if you played the game a lot, then you'll probably have noticed that health and ammo crates are a bit different to the ones in past games. As if a teammate drops an ammo box, you'll have to run over to it and pick up that ammo via button prompt, instead of it automatically being picked up by standing nearby. A lot of people will already know this one, but anyone who's new to the game will probably just expect health and ammo crates to work like they did in the past. Just a little reminder, they don't anymore, and you'll now have to manually pick up those medkits and ammo pouches up. Now, another new mechanic in Battlefield 5 is shooting frag grenades to blow them up early, and this can be a good thing to know if you want to ensure it's going to detonate to kill an enemy close by, before they have a chance to throw it back or run away. Though shooting grenades is easier said than done in the middle of a fight, because they're such a small target that's likely going to be rolling around on the floor in the distance. For this reason, unless you're pretty accurate, this tactic can be best done with rapid firing weapons that spew out lots of bullets quickly. Though if there's a group of enemies all huddled together at a choke point, and your grenade happens to land nearby to them, you might be best firing off a Panzerfaust or a Piat in their direction, which will detonate the grenade and basically create a deadlier explosion, with the Panzerfaust and grenade's blast damage stacking together, blowing those enemies sky high. Tip 19. Always keep an eye on your minimap and be aware of your own teammates' positions. This information can be just as useful as knowing your enemy's whereabouts, as your teammates will always show up on the minimap. So if you're running into an area and you see lots of allies there, you can usually presume it's going to be safe. If you're moving into an area with no teammates around, be a bit more wary about rushing through, keeping an eye out for possible threats. And if you notice a nearby teammate has suddenly gone down, there's a good chance they've been killed by the other team, so be extra cautious. And this is also a good way to know if you're being flanked. Make sure you pay close attention to those teammates on the minimap. Moving on to tip number 20, use those objective markers to see how far away your opponents are. All of the flags you can see in the game have a number underneath, indicating the distance between you and the flag. This information can be used for long-range sniping, as if an enemy is standing near to the flag, you can zero your rifle to that distance, allowing you to snipe long-range targets a bit easier. Or you could always use the spotting tool too, which also highlights enemy distances, to make life a little bit easier. Speaking of those conquest flags, something new that's been added into Battlefield 5 is the ability to capture flags quicker by standing closer. So although you can still just cap a flag by simply standing within the capture zone, you'll be able to get it done faster by standing near the actual flagpole itself. Definitely a good tip to know if you're all by yourself and desperately need to get that flag before your enemies come to try and stop you. This nicely leads me on to the next tip, as standing near a flag can sometimes be a bit risky, as you'll increase the capture speed, but you'll also often be more in the open and easier to be seen by enemies come to defend their flag. Remember what I said earlier about smoke grenades being really effective at blocking sight lines? Well, this is where they come into the scene once again. As if you throw down some smoke at the base of the flag, then you can quite comfortably cap that flag at maximum speed without having to worry about getting spotted. Another great reason to equip those smoke grenades. Now, with Battlefield 5's new attrition system limiting the amount of ammo players can carry, it means you're going to have to think a bit smarter about how you can keep going with the bullets you have, which can sometimes be quite precious if you're far away from a supply station or friendly support player. For this reason, if you happen to come across an unsuspecting enemy lying prone or sniping with their back turned, switching to your pistol and using that to kill them, or stabbing them with your melee weapon, can often be a much better way to preserve ammo for your primary gun. Tip 24, shoot down enemy flares. Unlike in Battlefield 1, you can actually do this now. So if an enemy scout pops a flare up in the sky and you can see it high above your position, just shoot the thing down, denying that flare and once again hiding your whereabouts. Can be a bit hard to spot them sometimes if they're high up, but it's definitely worth knowing that you can now disable them, should you see one hovering above. As for tip 25, if there's a few enemies on screen at once, maybe you've just flanked a squad and you're getting ready to take them all out, try and prioritise who to kill first. This is going to be the guy who poses the biggest threat, maybe the one who's looking in your direction, or the one that's closest by. Say you run around a corner and bump into two blokes rushing away from you towards an objective. If you start shooting at the guy in front, his buddy's going to notice and is probably going to spin around and mow you down. Shoot the guy behind and his mate is less likely to notice straight away, giving you a better chance to take them down too. Just be aware of this when there's multiple enemies around that you need to deal with, as you're more likely to survive against them all if you pick a specific order. Maybe leave the scout player last too if they're in CQC, as they're going to find it a lot harder to kill you quickly and react to your attack. As for the next tip, use downed enemies as a trap if there's other enemies nearby. Remember that scene in Saving Private Ryan with Vin Diesel getting shot out in the open, waiting for his squad to help him out while the sniper uses him as bait? Well, you can actually do this much more effectively now in Battlefield 5, as chances are one of those nearby enemies will be a squad mate or medic, who might possibly go over to perform a revive. This temporarily puts them in a really vulnerable position while they run through that animation, giving you plenty of time to take out that helpful teammate while they're an open target, unable to defend themselves. Tip 27, if you know for a fact that there's an enemy or two hiding within a building, perhaps one within a capture zone while they're attempting to take over a flag, just blow the thing down. Why rush in and risk your own life when you can simply load the bugger up with explosives and destroy their cover, damaging and often killing them in the process, and leaving any stragglers open for you and your team to light up. Seems like common sense, but you'll be surprised by how many assault and support players who have explosives equipped actually choose to run in and get shredded up by someone waiting in the corner, instead of putting those explosives to good use. And this also goes for enemies hiding behind walls, destructible cover and fortifications too. A lot of the time, your enemies won't be expecting it to get blown up while they hide behind it. A tip for when you're moving around the map now, make sure you take your time and take into account the direction where enemies are likely to come from, usually from their own flags. In Battlefield 5, enemies can often be harder to see, especially on some of the maps with lots of grass and shrubbery, so sometimes it's best to just dial back a bit and generally be less gung-ho, especially if you're suspicious of enemy activity in the area. 3D spotting is pretty much gone now, so you'll need to pay close attention to your surrounding more and spend more time on the lookout rather than staring at the minimap. It's best to train your eyes to look out for subtle movements in the environment, like a hawk looking for its prey, and it's best to be alert and ready to take on someone unexpectedly at all times, due to enemies often having the habit of popping up out of the blue. Another tip when trying to find enemies in the environment is to look out for muzzle flash. The weapons in Battlefield 5 have brighter muzzle flash than in the past when they're fired, and this is crucial to spot when you're seeking out an enemy that might be lying prone, hidden amongst rocks and debris on the floor. Now players have access to MMGs and scouts can be hard to spot while they stand still. The flash of their gun is more likely to give away their position. And this can also be a good tip if you happen to be an MMG user or a sniper, to only fire when you think your sights are lined up properly, otherwise you're more likely to get seen. Those scouts are still going to have scope glare, which they'll also need to take into account. Tip number 30, now this might seem like an obvious one, but always shoot at the head whenever you can. Headshots massively boost weapon damage in Battlefield 5, reducing kill times by a lot. And although they're not always easy to pull off on a moving target, if you happen to see someone who's stationary, maybe a scout trying to snipe or an enemy sat at a machine gun on top of a tank or using a stationary weapon, then this is going to cut down kill times exponentially. You'll spend less bullets and give your target less opportunity to escape your attack. And if you're using a bolt action rifle, you should always be going for headshots as much as possible without hesitation. Anyway, moving on. Tip 31, don't always use frag grenades to kill, as a lot of the time they're going to be much better tools for flushing enemies out of areas and hiding spots instead of actually killing them. If you lob a grenade towards someone hiding behind cover, then they're probably going to react and do everything in their power to stop that grenade from blowing them back to the spawn screen, especially with the grenade's fuse time being fairly long. This usually means that they're very likely to run out from behind cover to escape the blast radius or chuck the nade away from them, giving you a prime opportunity to gun them down while they do. Don't always rely on the grenade itself to do all the work. While we're on the topic of grenades, if you happen to be on the receiving end of a stray frag that's been tossed towards you, and it's too risky to leave cover or get close to the grenade to chuck it back in time, then it's always best to jump on the floor and go prone, as you'll receive less damage, which can quite often save your life if the grenade isn't too close. This was a pretty effective way to counter grenades in Battlefield 1, and it's the same story now in Battlefield 5. Plus you might also end up tricking enemies into thinking you're dead while you do. This is also the same for when you get set on fire too, as going prone will help you put out the flames, meaning you'll receive less damage overall. I've got a map specific tip for you now. If you're playing on Twisted Steel and you're at the B flag on top of the bridge, keep in mind that the whole area below you underneath the bridge is deep water. If things are starting to get a bit hairy up there and you really need to get the hell off that bridge, then don't be afraid to jump off it and plunge into the water below. It's deep enough to swim in and you're not going to receive any damage by falling, even though the bridge is pretty high up. Tip 34, if you're overlooking an area, perhaps defending an objective, along with fortifying said objective, you can also destroy any trees and things that enemies might use for cover, just outside the capture zone, making it a lot harder for them to advance forwards. Blowing trees and things up with explosives is a valid tactic to open up those sight lines and make it easier to spot enemies while your team defends. Pretty good thing to know in the breakthrough game mode. So anyone with explosives, including tanks and planes, are probably going to help defenders out quite a lot by removing some of those trees around the objectives. Moving on to tip 35, if you're within a capture zone taking a flag in Conquest, although you could choose to stand nearer to the flag to cap it quicker, sometimes it's best to just stay hidden, especially if there's an enemy already in that capture zone with you. Lying amongst the bushes and sticking within the shadows with your back to the wall can often be best in these situations, as it's only a matter of time before the enemy gets impatient and reveals themselves to hunt you down, allowing you to strike from the shadows, or your teammates come to assist. You'll blend in a lot easier if you hide, and you're more likely to win the flag off your enemy if you're careful. Patience is a virtue. Now, some of you might be wondering what all of those small light patches are on the minimap. These are dotted around all over the map, and there's quite a lot of them around objective points. These actually indicate places where fortifications can be constructed, and if you whip out that fortifications tool, you'll be able to see ghost outlines of possible structures to be built too, if you look around. Definitely handy if you want to know how to further improve a base, and need some quick reference, which will probably help you out a lot more if you're playing support, who's capable of building more structures and quicker. If tanks are giving you a hard time, you can use these fortifications to your advantage, by building tank traps to block off routes and deny access. These will help to stop vehicles from reaching certain areas, such as allied flags. Though another way to prevent tanks from getting around is by simply blowing up bridges that they might want to use. Enemies can always rebuild the bridges, but it's going to drastically slow them down and allow you to hold on to flags for longer, and run down their tickets as you do. Tip 38, always join a squad. even if you have no mates to play with. Joining the squad gives you access to more points to spawn on, and also gives other players access to spawn on you, who might help to capture objectives and assist you as you play, having the ability to supply you with ammo, health, and bringing you back from the dead when you get taken out. Along with gameplay benefits of joining a squad, you'll also be able to gain more points through squad related actions too, so it'll be even easier to rank up and get higher on the scoreboard, should you choose to follow them around. If you really want to be a good team player and net loads of easy points, keep supplying your squad and teammates with health or ammo whenever you get the opportunity, because ammo and health have to be manually picked up, and you can no longer rely on magical auras to refill your stash. This means that there's going to be a lot more players running around with lower amounts of ammo or health, which people often use straight away if they get shot. Take advantage of this and reap the rewards, chucking out health and ammo left, right and centre to keep your team stocked up. And because these pouches do need to be manually collected from drop crates, it's often best to equip throwable pouches instead, if you want to maximise those points. Another tip related to ammo now, because players don't spawn in with their ammo reserves maxed out, a good tactic to net lots of easy points at the start of a round is just to lob ammo at everyone when they've just spawned in, supplying them with more bullets. This is a good thing to know when a squad member spawns in on your position too, because they're not going to have max ammo, so why not top them up and give yourself some extra points while you do. Tip 41. Once you've captured a flag, usually near the start of a round, a lot of the time, some supply stations will need to be built first in order for them to be used. Why not be that guy who builds them, not only giving yourself and your team access to the stations, but also getting you more points in the process for building them too. It's a win-win. While we're on the subject of supply stations, if you get hit by a bullet or two, or you've taken a bit of damage somehow while you're near a flag, don't hesitate to use your med pack if you have one at the time to restore that lost health, as you can always just pick up another one from a nearby supply station within that same capture zone. And it's always best to have your health maxed out, to give you a much better chance of surviving an unexpected attack. A tip related to Conquest now, because Conquest is won by the team holding the most flags at a time, you can be just as helpful to your team by guarding capture zones as if you were capturing new ones, as if you hold down a flag and prevent oncoming enemies from taking it, then you're stopping the enemies from having more flags. A possible habit for a lot of players is just to rush around the map like a headless chicken and cap as many flags as possible. But overlooking already captured flags can be just as effective for your team's victory, and still help them out in a pretty big way. Tip 44, like I said in the last tip, because most players often like to rush around from flag to flag, their movement patterns can be pretty easy to predict. So if a nearby flag has just been captured by the enemy, it's highly likely that some enemies are just about ready to set off to capture the next one nearest by. By predicting their movements through popular travel routes, you can quite easily cut them off, create ambushes, and even flank around moving enemies to retake the last flag they've recently taken, often causing them to double back, where you can then mow them all down from a defensive position as they do. Moving on to tip 45, another Conquest related tip: don't neglect the flags around the edges of the map. Quite a lot of players tend to forget about these, and it's easy to just head to the capture zones in the middle, because that's usually where most of the action takes place. Remember that Conquest is won by the team holding the majority of flags, so these flags around the perimeter of the map are just as important to take as the ones in the centre, and are going to be just as valuable for your team's victory. Now, a couple of reviving tips. Only revive someone if you think it's safe to do so. If your teammate is out in the open and you've got no smoke to throw at them, don't feel too guilty about not reviving them, as it'll probably be too risky and it's not worth sacrificing your own life by trying, as you'll just bleed more tickets, negatively impacting your team. If you feel it's safe, or if the down teammate is out of enemy sightlines, then go ahead and go for that revive, but just think a bit more when choosing to do so. You don't get any extra credit for being a dead hero. Another revive tip, while the roles are reversed and it's you that's in the down state, if you think you're going to be putting a potential reviver in danger, especially if you know for a fact that there's an enemy nearby, possibly using you as bait, then it's always best to just bleed out instead of waiting, or you might just be leading a fellow teammate to their doom as they come over to help you out. Tip 48, remember to use Hipfire to your advantage in CQC, as it not only cuts out the time between aiming down sights and shooting, allowing you to fire a tad earlier, but it also means that you can be a more slippery target for your opponent to shoot at, having more maneuverability and being harder to hit with faster movement speed. Using Hipfire will often let you win more gunfights in close quarters, especially if you're wielding an SMG or shotgun, along with a weapon that's been upgraded with specializations to boost Hipfire accuracy too. As for tip 49, listen out for footsteps to give you more awareness of enemy locations. In the game's launch state, enemy footsteps have been extremely quiet and haven't really been very useful for relaying information at all. But once DICE has updated the footsteps and made them louder in a patch, this is going to be a huge tactical cue to give you a better understanding of your surroundings, and allow you to literally hear nearby enemies as they move around. It was a key thing to listen out for in past Battlefield games, and I'm sure once it's been patched, it'll once again be a very important aspect to keep in mind in Battlefield 5 as well. Especially now spotting has been reduced, and the minimap is far less useful than it was in the past. And last but not least, tip number 50. If you're in a squad and the leader isn't issuing any commands for you to follow, then you can actually get them replaced by requesting an order on the Comoros wheel. If the leader doesn't respond in about a minute, then they'll get demoted from being the squad leader and replaced. So there we have it folks, 50 tips, tricks and tactics to increase your skill and generally make you a better player. I know there's quite a lot of information here for your brain to soak up, but hopefully you'll remember some of these bits of advice and use them to your advantage the next time you play the game. But anyway, if the guide helps you out, let me know it by giving it a thumbs up, and subscribe for loads more Battlefield 5 content coming very soon. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll be seeing you in that next video.